Okay, so let's just take a real quick look at clarity versus texture and see what these two sliders do. So clarity has been around in Lightroom for a long time, and texture came along just not so long ago. So I'm going to use a face for an example. I do a lot of portraits and shoot a lot of people's faces and stuff like that. So let's just use this. This is pretty much unedited, and I say pretty much unedited. The only thing I did do was I removed a few blemishes that she had on her face here. But typically, if I was going to edit skin and everything for portraits, I go over into Photoshop. But that's all that has been done to this. So let's just jump right in and look. We'll look at clarity first. That's the one that has been around the longest. And I'm going to slide this up, and you can just see it adds a whole lot of grit and to this image. It's certainly something you wouldn't do to somebody's face. Now, for a landscape photo or some other type of maybe illustrative type effect, this would work. But as you can see, I'm just using this as an example. It just adds a lot of grit, and it also changes the color. I mean, it is a contrast that it's adding. Now, if you go the other way, it makes it unrealistic in the opposite way. Again, it kind of changed the color, and just everything looks like you certainly wouldn't use it this way either. So obviously you would use it somewhere in the middle. If you were going to use it on a face, let's double click, and that's what it does. So now let's go up here to texture, and again we'll exaggerate it and we'll just run it all the way over, and we can kind of see it does a very similar thing, but not quite as much of a color altering effect. It does what it says. It actually, you know, it enhances the texture that's there. Certainly the texture in her skin, it just exaggerated it beyond belief what you would want to do to skin. But let's go the other way. And it kind of, this reminds me of like the filters that we use in our phones when we're taking selfies and stuff like that, you know, the digital beauty filter. And it, again, taking it this way, it didn't really destroy like the hair the way clarity did, but it, again, is kind of unrealistic. Not as unrealistic as clarity, because remember when we took clarity down all the way, it just made it look horrible. So that's the difference between these two. And if I was going to use it, I would use it sparingly. And typically on somebody's face, I've used clarity for years. If I was doing quick edits and something, I would take it down to like -20. And it doesn't look like it did too much, but a lot of times with skin, once you back out on it, now, of course, I would crop this photo and bring it in a little bit closer. You know, I would do something maybe like, let's see, let's crop this and, you know, bring it in. Bring it down a little bit, maybe something like right about there. And you could use them in conjunction. You could use both of them. And if I was going to use both of them together, and I have, I would put them both right at 20. And you could possibly get away with 25. It depends on how zoomed in you're going to be at the end of your cropping and your editing. But that certainly looks a lot better than it did, you know, just as it was when we started. But if I was going to do an actual professional edit or something like that, I would do it over in Photoshop like I've done here for this. And this is an almost finished. The color has to be changed a little bit, but this was done in Photoshop, and we removed the hair up here and everything. And this has no clarity or texture added to it. I'm just using this again for an illustrative purpose, but there's your difference between clarity and texture. And I would just say use them sparingly. Okay, hey, if you like this video, hit like, hit subscribe, come back and check out more Lightroom tutorials for beginners.